There's a strange thing that happens in most American kitchens. The same family that worries about food prices, that watches the grocery bill climb every month, that talks about being more self-sufficient, that same family will spend hundreds of dollars a year on a fruit that was designed to grow in their own backyard for half a century. Not metaphorically, literally. The blueberry plant is one of the longest living food producers a household can own. It's also one of the most expensive things in the produce aisle. That gap between what's at the store and what could be at home is where most people quietly lose their food independence without ever noticing. And the reason almost nobody closes that gap is smaller than you'd think. It comes down to one piece of information that almost nobody learns until after they've already given up. I want to show you what that piece of information is, because once you see it, the whole picture changes. Let me ask you something. How many small plastic containers of blueberries have you bought in the last 12 months? Don't count exactly, just an estimate. 5? 20? 40? Drop the number in the comments. I'm curious where most people land. Because here's what almost no one sits down and calculates. The average American household that buys blueberries spends somewhere between $300 and $600 a year on them. That's not a fortune. But over 20 years, that same habit becomes $10,000. Over a lifetime, it's more. What makes that number strange isn't the size of it. It's that nobody watches it accumulating. There's no big moment of decision. No conversation at the kitchen table about whether the family is going to keep paying for blueberries for the next 40 years. It just happens, week by week, in the produce aisle, while everyone is thinking about something else. That's how most of us slowly outsource our food, not in big choices, but in small ones we never see ourselves making. And the strange part is that the plant producing those berries sits on the shelves of almost every garden center in the country, usually under $30, sometimes under $20. There's nothing rare or hard to find about it. So why do so few people grow them? That's the part worth understanding. A blueberry plant, properly cared for, can live more than 50 years. One planting. Half a century of fruit. That fact alone changes what a blueberry is. It isn't a fruit, it's an asset. It's something you put into the ground once, and it pays you back every single summer for longer than most people stay in the same house. Blueberries are also native to North America, which means if you live anywhere on this continent, the climate that grows them is already outside your door. You're not fighting the environment. You're working with it. I used to think growing fruit was something that happened on farms. Big land, long orchards. It took me years to understand that almost everything in the produce aisle was something a family had grown on a small piece of ground for most of human history. The grocery store didn't add the fruit to our lives. It just put a counter between us and it. Once you see that, the question shifts. The question isn't whether you should grow blueberries. The question is why so few people do. I want to tell you about something I've heard, almost word for word, from more people than I can count. It usually goes like this. Someone gets excited about growing fruit. They pick up a few blueberry plants on a Saturday morning. They bring them home, dig holes, water them in. The plants look healthy for a few weeks. Then something starts to shift. The leaves go a little yellow at the edges. New growth slows down. The plant doesn't die fast. It fades. By the end of the first season, the plants are gone. The person stands in the yard, looking at 4 empty spots in the soil, and concludes one thing: I can't grow blueberries. That conclusion is the most expensive part of the whole story, because it's wrong. The truth is, they walked into one specific trap that nobody warned them about. And once that conclusion sets in, the whole idea gets quietly retired. They never try again. A 50-year asset gets written off because of one number that nobody told them to check. I've watched this exact pattern play out in dozens of backyards. Those plants died from a chemistry problem the gardener couldn't see. Which brings us to the reason. Blueberries need acidic soil, specifically a pH between 4.5 and 5. That's well below what most native soil offers. Most American backyards sit somewhere between 6 and 7, almost neutral, which is fine for tomatoes, fine for lettuce, fine for almost every common garden plant. It's wrong for blueberries. In that range, the plant can't take up the nutrients sitting right next to its roots. It's surrounded by food it can't eat, so it slowly starves, even in soil that looks rich and healthy. This is also why containers, for blueberries specifically, often work better than planting in the ground. Inside a container, you control the soil completely. You build the right environment from scratch. The plant gets exactly what it needs from day one. No fighting your yard, no correcting decades of pH drift in soil that was never built for it. That single shift from in-ground to container separates the people who give up after the first try from the people who eat blueberries off their patio for the next 50 summers. But there's another piece nobody warns you about, and this one is stranger than the soil. Blueberries need cold to produce. Specifically, a certain number of hours every winter where the temperature drops below 45 degrees Fahrenheit. These are called chill hours. Without them, the plant won't bloom in spring. No bloom, no fruit. Some varieties need 200 chill hours, some need 800. The wrong variety in the wrong climate produces nothing for years, no matter how perfect the soil is. This is why the variety on the label matters more than almost anything else. Pick the wrong one for your climate, and you can do everything right and still walk into summer with an empty bush. Pick the right one, and you can do everything imperfectly and still get a harvest. Most garden centers in your area already filter for this. The plants on their shelves are usually matched to your local climate without you having to think about it. But it's worth checking the label, because the wrong plant can quietly waste 2 or 3 years of your time before you figure out what went wrong. The container itself matters. 20 gallons is the minimum. This is a perennial that's going to live longer than your car, your roof, and probably your current job. It needs room. Anything smaller, and the roots run out of space within a few seasons. The plant becomes what gardeners call root-bound. The roots wrap around themselves, the soil compacts, water stops absorbing properly, and the plant slowly dies of thirst inside a pot that looks fine from the outside. 6 to 8 hours of direct sun a day. Most backyards have a corner that fits this without much effort. Plant in fall, not spring. The plant settles its roots through the cold months, gets the chill hours it needs while you're not paying attention, and shows up in spring already established. Spring planting works. Fall is easier on the plant. If you have room for 2 plants instead of 1, take it. Most modern blueberry varieties can pollinate themselves, but every one of them produces more fruit when there's a second variety nearby. It's the difference between a small handful of berries each summer and bowls of them. Fertilize once a year. In early spring, before the leaves come back. The rest of the year, the plant takes care of itself. What other source of food in your life asks for that little attention and gives back for that long? Tell me in the comments. I'd be hard-pressed to name another one. There aren't many things in modern life that work this way. Almost everything you buy is depreciating from the moment of purchase. Cars, electronics, furniture, even most food. The whole shape of consumer life is built on things that lose value over time. A perennial in the corner of a patio doesn't follow that rule. It moves the other direction. Year over year, it becomes more productive, more established, more reliable. The longer it lives, the more it gives back. That's a different relationship with the world than most people have with anything else they own. And for most ordinary households, this is what preparedness actually looks like. It isn't a bunker, it isn't panic, it isn't stockpiles of food that expire before they're used. It's a perennial in the corner of a patio that quietly produces fruit for the next 5 decades while the household goes about its life. A small decision, made before it was needed, that compounds into something meaningful. The difference between a household that buys its food and a household that produces some of its food usually comes down to small choices nobody around them ever explained. The blueberry is one of the cleanest examples. Cheap to start, easy to maintain, productive for half a century, and almost nobody knows. That's the gap this channel exists to close. Some people prefer to put all of this into a more organized system. There's a guide called the Backyard Miracle Farm System that walks through one way to do that step by step. If you want to see how it works, the link is in the pinned comment. Before you go, I want to ask you one more thing. What's one food in your weekly grocery list that you've never even considered growing at home? Not because you decided not to, just because it never crossed your mind? Drop it in the comments. I read them, and those answers usually point at the next video worth making. If this way of thinking about your backyard is making sense to you, subscribe. There's more of this kind of content coming. Honestly, I'd walk into a garden center this week and pick up one container blueberry plant. Just one. The decision is small, the cost is low, and 50 years from now, that single afternoon will have produced more fruit than most people ever realize a single plant can hold.